All right. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon to you. I know there are several of you that we haven't met yet, but I just want to say how grateful I am for your time and for your disposition to be together this afternoon. All right, you are very welcome. We are part of PiXL International. We've been working in schools in Tanzania for maybe 6-7 years, maybe longer. And we love Tanzania. We love Tanzanians. We are really committed to walk together, to learn from each other. And one of the great benefits of being in a group like this is that we get to share together, we get to talk together, and I think that makes us stronger. So we wanted to share something that you might find interesting today. We're going to look at an idea that is called many things. We're going to, for the sake of today, we're going to call it class switching. I've got a short presentation for you here that I'll go through. I'll explain the setup. We'll look at disadvantages. We'll look at advantages, and then I want to share with you a case study. It's actually from Brazil. Although it's not Tanzania, you'll see that the setting will sound very, very familiar to you, and I think you'll enjoy the testimony. Okay, so during the presentation, if you want to ask questions, that is absolutely fine, or you can be just making a note of the questions when you hear it, when you get the question in your head, and then we're going to have a time for observations, perceptions, and questions at the end. All right, so we are going to head into the presentation here. Let's hope it all works. All right, so I don't know whether, Janet, you can unmute and just tell me if you can see this okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're going to look at this thing called class switching. All right, so the historic context for this is that in many thousands of schools around the world, the students come into school, they go into their classroom, and then they stay in their classroom for the whole day. Now that's very particularly normal for primary education, because the one teacher is teaching many different subjects to their class. But in secondary, you'll know the situation that the teachers move each lesson to teach their next class. So if I'm a mathematics teacher, I go to that classroom with that class, I teach maths, the bell goes, I then move my things and I go to a different class and then teach that class. Okay, so that is a very normal kind of reality for lots of schools. What I find very interesting is, because I've visited lots of schools all around the world that do this, and when I say, why do you do it that way, there's a variety of responses that I hear, and the main reason I hear is that basically, well, that's how we do things here, and that's what happened to us at school, And so we're kind of carrying on that. All right. And I find that very, very interesting, because often in schools all over the world, one of the reasons we do things is because that's the way things have always been done. And we just want to just press a little pause button on that and just say, hey, can we just for one moment think about what's the rationale? Is that the best rationale? Well, that's how we've always done things, so that's how we're going to carry on. Are there other ways of thinking? All right. So that approach that I've just described has certain challenges that I'm sure you will be familiar with. So the first, and I think a really, really serious challenge here, is ownership. So as a teacher, if I am the one moving, the classroom effectively belongs to the students. It's their territory. And from a behavior perspective, from an expectations perspective, that can often be problematic. All right. So the ownership is on the students, not on the teacher. And so because it's the students' class and the teachers are rotating, the teachers are moving, what often happens is if there is a display in the class, when the teacher leaves the class, before the next teacher arrives, there is a certain amount of time where the class is completely unsupervised. And quite often damage happens at that moment. Maybe some graffiti, maybe some tearing, but often teachers are reluctant to put up nice displays because of the potential for it being damaged. Next challenge is, and you'll know this, the teacher has to literally carry everything, the box of chalk, the duster, the books, exercise books, pencils. They are carrying everything from one lesson to another. And what we find that means is that approach actually discourages active learning. Okay, active learning, we've talked about this before, where we're wanting to involve materials that the children can manipulate to bring the learning alive, to bring choice, to bring adult-child interaction, adult support. When the teacher literally just has to carry the resources for that lesson with them, they're not physically able to carry resources that really help bring active learning alive. And so the energy in the classroom tends to drop because active learning isn't happening. Other challenges are to do with furniture, to do with class size. So if classes are to swap, if classes are to change rather than the teacher changing, then if one class has got 60 chairs and they need to go to a class and that class has only 50 chairs, that presents problems. When I've talked about this with many people, they talk about, well, it creates extra work for timetabling because we need to timetable the classes moving rather than the teacher moving. But my response to that, well, is it? Because you're either timetabling the teacher change or the class change. Okay, it's both involves timetabling. And another concern is the transition time. If the children are moving from one class to another, they go from their maths classroom to their Kiswahili classroom, that's going to take a long time. That's time that we're losing. And this is one that comes up a lot. Yeah, when those children are changing classes, the whole school is changing at the same time. There's the opportunity for possible behavior issues. So all of those are things that I've heard talked about when we look at switching classes. But you know what it's like. Every challenge can also be an opportunity. All right. So the ownership challenge, one of the real opportunities here with the teacher remaining in their classroom is that it becomes their classroom. It's their territory. They're able to set the expectations. The students are coming in to the teacher's territory. And what we find is that has a big effect on outcomes, on behavior, on attitudes in a positive way. With the teacher owning that space, display damage is much less likely. So where we've been into schools where they do this, the classroom environment is much more attractive. We often say the classroom is the second teacher in the room, because you've got opportunities for display work. You've got opportunities to showcase children's work where they've answered questions well, so they can learn from that. And so with the teacher owning that space, that becomes much less likely. And this is really key, because the teacher is staying in that one classroom. They're not needing to carry everything from one class to another. And it means that they are able to collect and procure more resources, very, very basic resources that they can then use to encourage active learning in their classrooms. Furniture and class sizes, that is an issue, all right? We can't get away from that. But with planning and with looking at class sizes, that can be minimized. Let me give you an example. Often you might have a class size of, say, 40. So you think, right, we need 40 chairs. But actually, when you look back through the register, you see that actually most of the time, there are always maybe at least three children that are absent. And so although it's a class of 40, it's very rare that you actually need 40 chairs. And so if suddenly they do all turn up, they can sort of squeeze on some benches together. So that can be mitigated. Timetabling, I've already talked about this. For the school timetabler, you're timetabling the class changes rather than the teachers changing. So it's very, very similar work, very similar concept. The transition time. How long does it take for students to change? Well, in my school, I led in London. We have 1,200 children at the same time. And all of those children change classes within 5 minutes. All right, most of them within 3 minutes. All right. And the reason for that is that there's an expectation on the children not to loiter, but to head to their next class straight away. There is a code of conduct, there is an agreement that sets out expectations for lesson changing, and that can be well managed. What we also find is that for the students, it re-energizes them, for them to actually be able to physically get up, move their limbs to get from one lesson to another, just re-energizes them, re-oxygenates their brains, and they arrive at a higher level of energy, ready to learn, all right? And with regards to the possible behavior issues, what we strongly recommend is that at class transition times, every teacher stands at their door in the kind of gateway to the door, the threshold, where they can see into their class and outside of their class. And we call it meet and greet. So as the class is arriving, they're welcoming the children into their classroom. Come on, in you go. There's maybe an activity ready for them to go. But also there's all your teachers' eyes out on the corridors, onto the play area, to encourage children, to call, come on, hurry up. So you've got all those eyes ready for supervision to get the children into their classes quickly. All right. Now, often when I talk with teachers about this, they admit that actually for them to change from one classroom to another takes about 5 minutes. By the time they've packed up, by the time they've got all their things together, they've walked to their next classroom, you can be looking at 5 minutes. So that transition time is very, very similar. So I'm coming to the close, but I wanted to share with you a case study from a school in central Brazil called Alzira School. And what happened was that the school, as everything happens in this case, everything begins with leadership. All right. So the school leader, the head teacher, the deputy, they acknowledged there were big issues. The students were owning the classrooms, everything that I've just shared. And what the leadership thought about was, right, why don't we be courageous and we'll have a pilot? We're not going to say this is a change forever, but we're going to do a couple of months with this new idea to see, could this work? So courage is important, isn't it, for any change? But interestingly, in this school, the teachers and the students did not want the change. All right. And I've put the question there, my friends, why? So when we come to the questions at the end, I wonder if any of you could give me an answer as to why do you think the students didn't want the change? And why do you think the teachers didn't want the change? All right. So in other words, there was resistance. But the leadership pressed ahead with the pilot. All right. There was very careful planning of the timetable. So all the classes knew exactly where they had to go. Each child had a timetable showing where their class had to go. There was very careful communications with students and parents that helped explain what the change was going to be, and really importantly, why that change was a good idea. The first 2 days, it was chaos. All right. If you'd been there, you'd be thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is not working. All right. But the leadership kept their cool. They pressed on. And 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, when they asked the teachers, how are you getting on? Would you want to go back to the old way? None of the teachers ever wanted to go back to the old way, just because of the advantages that I've just shared with you. And what happened was that the children actually enjoyed their lessons more because there was more active learning, because there were more resources in the classroom. And so their results increased. And because the children began to enjoy school more and more, the truancy rate dropped. In other words, more children liked being in school. And the head teacher thought that was absolutely fantastic. So that's a little case study for you. I'm now going to close the PowerPoint, and we're going to come to, hopefully, your questions, comments, and observations. Right. So I wonder if there's any of you that would like to go first with a comment, with an observation of what I've shared with you, with any questions that you've got. You can ask anything. Please do not be embarrassed.
Thank you. May I know your name again?
Yeah, that's okay. It's down on the Zoom window. It's Mr. Phil Hawkins.
Oh, thank you, Philip. That was excellent presentation.
Thank you,
And
Teresa.
I like the last part of the benefits. The students got re-energized. I also like the idea of the meet and greet on the part of the teachers. Although there will be instances where the teacher is glued onto the chair and the kids just come in.
Oh, Teresa, you are absolutely right. So the head teacher has to be out as well, looking for the teachers that are not doing what they're meant to be doing.
It's absolutely amazing. Most universities use that approach because the students have to move if either they're going to the practice classes or whatever. So most universities, students do move, not the teachers, except for most graduate programs. The older they get, the heavier they get to move. But I think it is a very nice model. Small schools like Esimi, where Joanne teaches, they could adapt this very well. What do you say, Joanne?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm proud enough to say that we actually do have that approach at the moment. Where, yes, we do. The part that is maybe a little bit challenging is bringing the classrooms to life. But I think the students do own their classrooms. Bringing them to life is a little bit of a challenge, and I think that does involve a little bit more of an effort on the teacher's side. This is now teachers owning their classrooms, because I think there's students owning and there's teachers owning. So yeah, but I'm glad to say we do have that approach at the moment.
So thank you, Joanne. So just to clarify, are you saying that in your school at the moment, the teachers stay in the classrooms and the children rotate?
Actually, sorry, vice versa. The children stay in, okay, it's children owned, let me say. Right. Yeah, the kids stay in the classrooms and the teachers move around. And I think it's one thing though is a challenge is because at the moment, we do have instances where kids have stationary, things missing from their desks. So I think it is easier for them if they stay in one place, because, okay, if you have different subjects, it's easier for them to open your desk, you're in class, you open your desk, your books are there, instead of having them moving around, okay, I need to go. It also adds to them being late. I don't have this book, I don't have that book. Yeah. So I've seen this to be one kind of an advantage for them staying in their classroom. But then I think the onus here is for the teacher to now bring the classroom to life. So the classrooms are owned by the students. Right.
So thank you, Joanne. So I'm very curious to see. Sorry if this is putting you on the spot, Joanne.
No, not a problem.
But you'll remember in my presentation, I said that when in the example from Brazil, when the change was proposed, the children and the teachers did not want it. Why do you think that was?
I really wouldn't like to give a like I said, you're putting me on the spot, an answer that I've not thought out.
Okay.
But I would think there are, probably, different respective individual challenges or situations or circumstances within schools that would have to be taken into consideration. School size as well, number of pupils. Excuse me. I mean, our classes, we have a very small number of students. So they do not exceed 20 in a class.
Right.
So movement it's a lot easier because if we had, let's say, classes of, let's say, 40, space would have to be taken into consideration. Okay, maybe you have a class of 40 minutes, or you have a double class, you have 6 classes times how many kids, hundreds of kids moving around every hour or every 2 hours. I think that's a little bit of a challenge, opposed to having 6 or 7 or however many teachers it is moving around. I think it also helps with cutting down on time.
Joanne,
know.
is your school a primary school?
Yes, it's a primary school.
Right. Yeah. So
Uh,
you, like I said, in primary, it's often the one teacher teaches all the different subjects. And so,
Mhm.
you know, so it makes sense for, you know, the teacher to have their classroom, and that's grade 2's classroom. Okay. This is much more towards secondary, or, you know, middle or
Okay.
secondary school. Yeah.
I can see environmental challenges sometimes, you know, in the rainy season when it's muddy outside and so on, and kids staying indoors and one teacher moving might be easier. But like the school, you give examples in London, most schools, the environment might not be as much of a challenge. If it's snow, people are running to get out of snow. But it's not as muddy as some of these school environments are. So, and kids trying to not to get wet and so on. So there could be different reasons for different schools.
Yeah.
However, this model is nice. If anybody can adapt it to their environment, that would be good. It's not every school that will be able to do so, but those that can, I think it's a good model.
Great. Thanks, Teresa.
May I say something? May I introduce someone? I
Yes,
have a student of social work here. She's doing a diploma in social work, but she has also a diploma in teaching. So she's a teacher, so I invited her to this.
Great.
And her experience teaching was, I think, teaching practice, because she finished and came here to do social work. But her name is Namara. Namara, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Namara Ogoshoa. I am a teacher, though I've not started teaching, it was just
Teaching practice.
yeah, it's just a teaching practice.
Okay, she's a teacher of chemistry and physics in secondary school.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you. All right.
Nice to meet you.
We hope you will come to future sessions.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Great. Let me if I can ask Charles. Charles, if you're there, have you got any comments or questions you would like to add into what we've been talking about?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to thank you for all you have taught us, for the explaining. Actually, you are good, but I have one question. I don't know, may I ask you the question?
Yeah, of course, sir.
From the challenges, the third point, that teachers kills everything, discourage active learning. How far, if you found the environment are not conducive, how about that, about those teachers who are just moving from one class to another class?
So your question is, when the teachers are just moving from class to class, how does that discourage active learning? Is that your question?
That is.
Okay, great. So thank you, Charles. What we find is that there are particular ingredients that make active learning happen. All right. There's 5 key ingredients for active learning. They are materials. So the children need something to have. It could be seeds, it could be little pebbles, it could be sticks, it could be shells. We're not talking expensive, fancy things that cost a lot of money. Could be jars, it could be bottle tops, all sorts of things. The second one is manipulation. So the children don't just look at the material, but they're actually able to do something with it, all right? Because that brings, mentally, that brings the learning alive to them, all right? So if you're doing division in mathematics and the children have got 20 seeds on their desk and the teacher says, right, you know, divide the seeds into four groups of equal seeds, the children actually being able to manipulate the materials to do that helps solidify, helps bring an abstract concept and make it concrete. So manipulation is important. The third thing is choice. So choice helps children and young people feel more involved. It gives them what we call agency, and that's important. The fourth one is effective use of language. So ensuring during the active learning that children are encouraged to talk about what they're doing. All right. Now, often we find the opposite in classrooms. The teacher wants everyone to be silent because a silent classroom is a good classroom. And actually, that's not the case. We want children to talk out their learning because that helps them learn better. And then the final one is supported adult-child interactions. So the teacher walking around the class, engaging with the children, supporting where they're getting stuck, asking them why they're doing what they're doing, just really, really helps. All right. So Charles, from those 5 things, choice, language, and adult-child interaction are possible, very, very possible, in the old model of the children remaining in the class and the teacher moving. Great. However, the first one, which is materials, is much more problematic, because if I've got in my class, I've got the benches, maybe 3 children are sat on each bench at a desk, and there are 20 of those benches in my class. To carry the resources, let's say we're using seeds, to carry all the materials with me, to go to that classroom, to then distribute it onto the tables. For most teachers, they simply won't do that. That's too much work. All right. But if you are the teacher in the classroom, it's your classroom, you've got a cupboard next to you that's got the pots with all of the seeds in there ready. Guess what? It's much more easy to give the children materials to use because it's there right in front of you. And so that's why we see active learning happening more and more when the teachers own the classrooms. So Charles, that was a very long reply to your excellent question. What do you think about what I've just said?
I think from explanations you have been explained well, and I have been understanding. So now you're okay, we can progress, but also I have got another question. So if you allow me, I can ask it.
Yes, please, Charles.
Okay. From the case study, which have been taken from Asia School, Brazil,
Yes.
the third point you have said that the teachers and students did not want to change. So my question is, why didn't they want to change?
So Charles, what have you got any ideas?
Yes.
Please could you share your ideas? I'm very interested to hear what you think, and then I'll tell you what the teacher said in Brazil.
Okay. From what I know, when teacher maybe is just teaching in a class, So we found maybe the environment not conducive. Apart from that, maybe the air condition is not good. Maybe the thinking capacity of a student is not good or is not well compared to what a teacher is just teaching a class. So what's supposed to be there is just the teacher to beg his or her fellow teachers to tell him or her that if you want this student to be in a good way, you have to do this and to do this. But if you fail to do that, you found your class can't meet your needs.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, these things, yes, they do happen. So to let you know, in the Brazilian context, the children did not want the change. And there was a very simple reason for that. When you have won territory, you don't want to give it up. So the children understood that they owned the classroom. The teacher was coming into their space, and they liked that power, and they didn't want to give up that power. So that's the reason the children initially resisted. As you saw on the presentation, actually, they then really enjoyed the change. The teachers did not want to try it, and it was for a very, very simple reason, and it's something that all of us will be very familiar with, and it's called being resistant to change. All right. If you're a teacher and you've been used to doing a particular thing for many years, and that's what happened to you when you were at school, when someone proposes something different, it's suddenly, right, no, actually, just leave things alone as they are. Do you know what? We're fine. We don't need this change. All right, because, hey, for all of us, underneath change, okay, it means we have to change. I have to change. And what happens is that inside of me, in my psyche, in my emotions, I want to stay in my comfort zone. So I want to resist change, and I might even do it unconsciously, but I want to remain comfortable. And change, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. And so there's a resistance to it. And I don't know in your schools whether you find that as well, but changing behavior is very, very challenging. All right, so that's, Charles, that's the reason why the teachers and the students didn't want it to begin with. Joyce. Oh, yes. Hello, Teresa.
Yeah, may I leave, please? Because as I said, I was trying to send a message, it couldn't go through. It's convocation here, and there is so much demand for my time. Thank you very much. It was nice listening to you. Thank you, everybody. I enjoyed your participation.
Right. Thank you, Teresa. God bless you. Have a great day.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye now. Yeah, so Joyce, John, Salma, is there anything you want to add into or ask anything? Or Joanne?
Yeah, yes. May I ask a question? How different is this? How different is this mode of teaching compared to the Montessori mode of teaching? That's one question. And also, you know how you say for the there's the materials and there's the communication of the teachers and the kids in the classrooms. Isn't this for an environment where you have well, how would one teacher, let's say in an environment where you have one teacher and 40 students, how would the teacher encourage how many students to give their feedback at one particular time? How would that work out? If they didn't have any supportive staff, as a lot of secondary schools over here are. We have one teacher and overpopulated classrooms. How does that work out?
So, so I think, Joanne, you're asking there a wider question on effectively formative assessment, how the teacher finds out whether the children are learning what they're meant to be learning. All right, when you have a class size of 40, and maybe we'll do another session on that, Joanne, because there are very clear, relatively simple ways that a teacher can do that, because what the teacher is really after is a representative sample that is randomized to see whether the children are getting it. All right. Incidentally,
Sorry,
sorry,
Salma Morali. I got disconnected due to power cut.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
welcome back.
Thank you. So
yeah. So one of the challenges, Joanne and everyone, and again we can talk about this another time, is historically, what do teachers do? They ask a question, and then what happens? The children put up their hands, and the teacher then selects one of the children who's got their hands up. That is the classic teacher-child question technique. The problem is that it's inherently really bad at providing effective feedback. All right. We know from research that there are big problems with that. And so on another occasion, Joanne, we'll do a bit more work on formative assessment. Okay.
Okie dokes.
Okay.
Can I, my other question,
yeah.
sorry.
No.
My previous question was, how different is this? Because you've talked about materials and effective use of language and manipulation, where kids are actively involved and teachers
yes.
What is the difference between that mode of teaching and the Montessori mode of teaching or learning?
Yep. So Joanne, great question. So the answer is that that there are similarities to Montessori, but the Montessori is a lot more complex, in-depth, requires significant training to do the Montessori method. And what we've seen all over the world is a kind of simplified version that any teacher in any culture, in any country can use without having huge amounts of investment needed to train up to the standard that a Montessori school would be. All right, so Joanne, it's a little bit like a hybrid Montessori.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything from Joyce or John or Geraz or iPhone? Okay. A few more seconds. Oh. Right.
I think it's good from class to class.
Right. Sorry, Joyce, the signal kind of disappeared and we couldn't really hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Yani ukikwama kesho kwa sababu binti alitoka ndiye anaweza kumpa ruhusa yani kile ndio kwa manakwa kama mteo kama anaweza kutumia zile ambazo katika mara moja nazo yenyewe. Kwa hiyo ni mbili na kusogeza kama anaweza kuzipata. Kwa hiyo kuna mbili.
Right. we're not sure, Jaraz, what you are saying. I don't know whether our colleagues can let us know whether that's okay, what's being said. Right. Janet. Okay, right. So Joyce, could you have another go, please, at your question?
Oh no, it's not just a question, but I was just imagine, you know, in your country, I think it's simple to move from class to class in university, because in secondary school it is 40 minutes per lesson. So I can't imagine what will be happen to move from class to class where the lesson it's only 40 minutes. We will lose the many time moving from class to class. How is it?
Right. Okay. So Joyce, a great question. And it's a question that comes up a lot in these discussions. So first of all, the first question is, do lessons have to be 40 minutes? Who decided that? Is that a government law, or does the school have any flexibility? Okay, so often schools inherit systems where every lesson is 40 minutes, and actually you can change it. You can I've done timetabling that does exactly that. So the children end up with the same number of minutes in a lesson across a week, but the lessons last longer. The second thing to say is that the concern about the time that it takes to change, we would just challenge the school to go and stand somewhere with a stop clock and measure the time it takes from when one teacher walks out of their room to the new teacher walking into the room. I've done that, and it's often over 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. So those children are in dead time. There's no teaching going on in that time. The next point, Joyce, is that even though, let's say, you stayed at 40 minutes and there was that handover time that went on for a little bit. I guess the question is, it's a kind of cost-benefit analysis. The cost is that you lose some minutes in the class. But if the benefit is that the children arrive re-energized into an amazing classroom that's full of interesting things and active learning, then their learning, even in reduced time, their learning is more effective. And that's really what we want to look at. Is what we're doing leading to more effective learning, or is it not? So that would be my response to that, Joyce. And by the way, you know, we hear often, oh, it's, you know, it's okay for you in England. You know, you can do this. As I said to you, you know, I was in a government school, 1,200 children at the same time, not all behaving like little angels, but they changed in 5 minutes. And it's because the culture of the school runs the behavior of the school. All right. And so we have seen this in Brazil. We've seen it in other countries around the world where they've tried this and they've helped to change the culture so that this becomes a real reality and people don't want to go back to the old ways. All right. Okay. Any other questions just before we close? Okay. Janet, could you unmute? Janet, what's your reflections having listened to all of that?
I think it was you made a very compelling case, and certainly I've taught in many different situations, and certainly having ownership of the classroom for a teacher, I think, has huge benefits in terms of being able to make it your space being able to put resources on the wall, for knowing that you have all of the materials that you need to deliver active lessons. So I know that some schools here, such as Zikondo, are thinking about implementing this. I know that there are some challenges in terms of needing cupboards and things like that to keep resources in the classrooms. But I think it's a really good idea, and I look forward to hearing how they progress with that. So others who may be thinking about it, I would urge you to certainly think about doing this. I think, just as the school in Brazil found, I think you will be pleasantly surprised about the impact.
Great. And dear friends, just to say that part of being in this group with us at PiXL International and TDT is that we're available. We're available to help. So that if you are in a school that are considering this approach, you can reach out to me and we can arrange a private Zoom conversation, and we can help you strategize and plan and think through how you could make this happen as a pilot project, and be there for advice and for counsel as you go through it. So don't just think about this group as every month we get a chance to be together. We are available through the month for one-to-one help as well. So you are very welcome. You've all got my number on the WhatsApp group. You can just reach out and connect. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, everyone. I'll put the recording of this into the WhatsApp group shortly, and thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a really excellent weekend, and we'll be in touch on the group about our next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.